The 1920s represented a time of great change for the United States. Americans believed that private enterprise was their key to great financial success, the nation's wealth almost doubling from 1920 to 1929 in this new consumer society. Then, in October of 1929, the stock market crashed. Banks had loaned out more money than they had in reserve, and the American dream of prosperity sank. The Great Depression had begun. President Hoover believed the economy would fix itself with minor government adjustments, but as things became worse, he kept stepping back as the nation continued to cry for help. In November of 1932, Franklin D. Roosevelt was elected president. As soon as he took office, President Roosevelt began enacting his plans and policies as part of the New Deal. In 1933, he created the first major federal welfare program in U.S. history, the Federal Emergency Relief Administration. FARA was designed to aid states and local governments to fund their welfare programs. When critics pointed out that FARA was not helping to create jobs, President Roosevelt created the Civilian Works Administration, and the government started over 190,000 projects, such as road construction, digging ditches, and cleaning parks. This gave 16 million Americans jobs. Another job-producing program created in 1933 was the Civilian Conservation Corps, hiring 2.5 million men between the ages of 18 and 25 to do conservation projects. In 1935, President Roosevelt introduced the Social Security Act, which contained 2 social insurance programs, 3 relief programs, and other smaller programs. The 3 relief programs were the first major federal relief programs in the United States and comprised of the Old Age Assistance, Aid to Dependent Children, and Aid to the Blind. It should be noted that it wasn't until the 1960s that more federal relief programs were put into place. Roosevelt was elected again as president in 1936. In the second term, social welfare systems were in need of better organization, and so he created the Federal Security Agency and the Federal Works Agency to manage this issue. Considering that 20 years before there was no need for these agencies, speaks to the policy changes happening within the U.S. As the end of the 1930s approached, Roosevelt's attention began to draw away from policy reform and move toward war preparation. As funding increased for the War Department, funding for New Deal policies decreased. Fortunately, by late 1941, with heavy funding going to the war, unemployment reached an all-time low as jobs were created to support the war effort. So what can we learn today from the efforts of social advocates and policymakers during this period? President Roosevelt proved that the federal government could create and manage national welfare states. His wife Eleanor showed how close policy, advocacy, and politics are related. She personally visited impoverished areas in order to educate herself on the struggles of oppressed individuals and brought back what she learned to her husband, pushing for social policies to aid those who needed them. And finally, we can see how policy advocates can work in politics or as advocacy leaders to make a change.